Hey everyone, James Patrick here. Excited to be jumping in on the mixing and mastering level in Ableton Live program. I've been making electronic music for about 20 years, and mixing and mastering is just the essential art of balancing everything so all your sounds are loud and clear, and the whole cheeseburger tastes good when you take a bite. There's not too much ketchup or mustard or anything. It's just well balanced and easily digestible. We're going to be moving with this song here as our example through all the stages of mixing that you'll be able to apply to your own songs, just one step at a time. And ultimately, at the end of this level, we're going to master or maximize our song's volume and loudness and clarity, so it'll be ready for the Spotify stream or our record bag for our DJ sets or whatever we're going to do with it. So yep, again, James Patrick, and I'm happy to be taking you guys on this journey. Let's jump in on this track. This track is primarily just raw analog synth recordings and some MIDI tracks for some drum machines, maybe an acoustic instrument or two just to kind of spice up the deal. Let's listen to it and see what we're going to be mixing over the next couple videos. So as you can hear, I got drums, I got percussion, I got bass, some synthesizer stuff, tambourine, another layer of synth stuff here. So that's kind of the first section. As we move further into the track, we get some pads and some chords. Get a little bit of a key change in there for the breakdown. Nice synthesizer pad. Another element there. This is some Rhodes keys, also a synthesizer. Sound effects too. Those guys. Little crunchies in there too. We also have a nice acoustic drum kit that I sampled, just for the drum fill, it's nice. So that's pretty much all the elements. And so one of the first things we're going to tackle is we're going to organize the mixer. This whole series of videos up front before we get started on the actual mix is going to be about preparing to mix. So in preparing for the actual mix down, the first thing we're going to want to do is organize the mixer. Now this mixer or this arrangement is pretty well organized, thank you, but generally there's always a little bit of refining we can do to make sure that we can see everything and we have a good visual for where all the parts are, so we're not sifting around and digging through our mixer trying to find the right sounds. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to optimize the size of all these channels. You can see I have 5 return tracks. A couple of these are big. I'm going to shift click on them and make them tiny so they're out of the way. I'm even going to take this scene launcher, which I no longer need, and move it out of the way. And then as you can see, I've got this kind of mixer here, I don't know, not a ton of tracks here, but 16 or 17. I'm going to click on one and hit Command A or Control A on the PC to select all the tracks, get the brackets, and I'm going to squeeze the mixer a little bit. Now I get a nice kind of compact view, which is nice. And in addition to that, now since I'm going to be adjusting the levels of everything all really closely, it makes sense to grab the mixer channels and make them nice and tall. Now I get a nice big old mixer of all my sounds. I can see them all at once. And this usually leads me to the next step, which is really, really effective, which is going to the master channel and going ahead and grabbing a Spectrum device. The spectrum is an audio effect we can find in our audio effects folder, or we can just type and hit arrow down, enter, and now we can see not only the mixer, but we can see on the master channel the overall spectral content. This tool is very helpful for all sorts of audio applications, sound design and acoustics and everything, but here we'll be able to really see how well our overall mix is balanced out as far as low end and mid range and textures and ambiances in the upper frequency range there. So once we've done all that, I usually like to go through the mixer here and make sure that everything is nicely named and organized. If you've been studying with me in the past, or possibly Dr. J, you will have a workflow already for keeping your mixer nicely organized, but generally that starts like this. Starting on the left, we should have drums, percussion, and bass. Basically, the whole rhythm section should be on the far left, starting with the drum kit. And then we should have note stuff like melodies and harmonies and chords. Those should all be in the middle. And then we should have sound effects, vocals, and any sort of live instrumentation that we're adding that is like a lead kind of thing. That could be potentially on the far right. Usually it's the sound effects, the non-repeating sounds, and the one-shots. And then, of course, we have our return tracks over here, which might end up being in the mixer eventually anyway. You can see if you look around here, I've got baseline 2. Let's move that over to the baseline area. And like here's melodies, chords, pads, funky. Funky's more of like a melodic kind of thing too. Let's move this over by the melodic stuff. Grindy, this is a sound effect. Cymbal is a non-repeating kind of one-shot crash that happens once in a while. And then effects. Oh, look at this empty MIDI track. Now let's get rid of that. In fact, look at this audio track. Pretty sure this isn't being used for anything either. Let's double check. Nothing's on that track. We can get rid of that too. And as we start making these changes, it would be a good time now to do a Shift-Command-S. That's going to be like a save as. And I'd say, okay, this is called Intelligent Democracy Music. It's we're at the crazy turn of political events in our world right now, so that's kind of the inspiration for this. And I'm just going to put at the end of this mix down. So I know, like, if I want to harvest any of those parts I'm deleting or moving, I can find them in the previous version. But by putting mix down on the end, I've got it in my project, or in my live set name. That's going to help keep things nicely organized. Cool. So once I've got, drums, percussion, bass, melody, harmony, sound effects, and non-repeating sounds over here on the right, along with vocals if there were any, and then of course my return tracks nicely organized, then I'm going to look at possibly grouping things. Now, for instance, maracas and tambourine, those are both just handheld percussion. I usually like to filter and EQ those together, so I'm going to shift click on those two and hit Command G, and I'm going to say percussion. I'm going to fold that up. Here's my two bassline tracks. By the look of things, actually, let's double check baseline 2. I'm going to hit tab, and by the look of it, I never even used that one in this session. So this is another advantage of hitting save as, because I know I'll be able to find that later if I need it. I'm going to delete that one. MIDI to Boutique. This was the MIDI track I was using to control the analog synth I have sitting next to me. You can't really see in the camera. That I don't really need anymore either. Let's see if I want to save any of that MIDI. Maybe some of those MIDI notes I'll hang on to. So let's look. How about melodic stuff? Let's grab these 3 melodic instruments, the funky one too, and let's hit group on that. Maybe call this melody. We're consolidating this mixer is going to help a ton, keeping things tight. How about chords and pad? Sure, those are both in the harmony category. Command G. You don't have to do this, but it does make things a little nicer, especially if you happen to have a session with like 1,000 channels in it, or even anything more than 20 or 30. It gets to be a little unwieldy. So if nothing else, for the sake of grouping and just keeping things easy to look at and see all at once, it's nice to group stuff. But I also find, beyond just organization, it's really nice and effective to be able to put like a sidechain compressor or an EQ, which we'll talk about in upcoming videos, on the whole bus. That can go a long way with keeping things tight and saving you a bunch of dinking around. So grindy, cymbals, and effects, these are all one-shots or sound effects. I'm just going to rename this and call this effects. So now look at my mixer, even nicer to look at, especially now I can maybe grab all these one last time with Command A, and I can fold them up, and that's going to make them all kind of the same width. Now look at that nice business. I can see everything all at once. There's my mixer. It looks even easier to approach now. So Got my tracks all grouped and well organized. I've bussed them where possible. I've adjusted my mixer height. And I've even put a spectrum on the mains. So one other pro tip that I think is real tasty is you can hit Option Command O, and that'd be Alt Control O on the PC if you want. And you can pull this down. Now you can actually see your whole mixer. Now I gotta watch out for not having enough room for my actual faders with the spectrum. So maybe I'll make these a little bit smaller. This can be a good opportunity to, because now I can see the whole song with the arrangement overview, but this can be a good opportunity to do a little real estate, so to speak. Maybe I'll pop this up. Now I can see the song, I can see the mixer, I can see the spectrum. Everything's all well balanced and ready to go. I'm feeling pretty good about this. This is kind of preparing for the mix. And as kind of like administrative and not very creative as this seems, the more organized you can be when it's time to do a mix down, the more quickly you'll be able to work. And that's really important because each time you hear that song looping over and over and don't know what to do with it, you're going to like it less and less. Like I say this to my students all the time, that the best song in the world on repeat for 3 or 4 days is going to start to drive you nuts. And so don't let that be you with your own original creations, because once you lose inspiration, it's pretty much over. So doing all this without listening to it, especially listening to it very loud, and just getting things nicely organized is going to help a ton with you expediting the mix down and getting on to making more music. And that's really the goal. So this has been video 1 for preparing the mix, and happy to be here. All right. On to the next video.